Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you. Today, I think President Trump is in Harrisburg, and I know he may be saying something about North Korea. So I thought, considering I'm in Lancaster, I'll try to do the same for Manheim Township School District. For those of you that where he gets a little bellicose towards North Korea, I am a general, so maybe I can deploy the same type of resources if they're not fiscally responsible and comply with the open records law. I don't quite have the nuclear arsenal that the president has, but I do have Liz Wagenseller, my chief of staff. So, and I'm not sure we have Liz, do you have the nuclear football with you, or it's right there? Okay, good. Sometimes the life of an auditor can be a bit challenging. So I get elected in 2012, and for those of you that don't know, I'm a Democrat, and Governor Corbett was the governor at the time, and he was a Republican. And so what do? I do audits. And there may be a rumor out there that I want to just confirm is accurate. There are times when the government doesn't operate at 100% efficiency. Now, some of you, I just want to let you know, whether you believe in a more activist government or not, I just want to sometimes that happens. So Governor Corbett was in, and we would do audits that would reflect sometimes state government not operating at 100% efficiency. And I would go to the Democratic dinners after these audits. You get them. You go. Republicans would say, "Why are you so tough on our guy? Don't be so partisan." Then Tom Wolf beats Tom Corbett. I keep doing my job. Then I go to the Democratic dinners. "Why are you being so hard on the governor?" And then the Republicans start going, "We knew we liked you for a reason. You're tough, blah, blah, blah." So that's the life of an auditor. It was an interesting week this week. Who here knows that Monday Night Football was a big night for a certain segment of society? Star Wars trailer was on. So if you like football and you had to suffer through that first half, which was one of the worst halves of professional football you could ever imagine, you get to halftime. And after halftime, I started getting Google News alerts about what's going on with the borrowing, et cetera, for the state. So I want to come back to why this budget situation is something that all of us should be weighing in on and consider important and what's happening with the state budget. But I'm going to tell you why that matters. First of all, I've been now Auditor General for closing in on 5 years. A couple extra grays, et cetera, that go with that. But I've loved every single second of the job. And one of the things that I've been able to do as Auditor General is identify nearly $600 million in wasteful spending during that time. Money that should be better spent either whether it's lowering a tax rate or better spent on helping some program, including $100 million of your tax dollars that are going to Wall Street managers managing the state's pension funds that aren't even beating the stock index fund. Think about that for a second. If you just put it into a Vanguard fund, our pensions would have been in a better position today than spending $100 million per year on fund managers. Those are just some recommendations we get to make. But there's other things that I think cut to even a bigger core of what I think government should be doing. Now again, I am sure that if we all talked about what we thought government should and shouldn't do, there'd be a difference of opinion here. But I do think at some level, defending the defenseless, to me, is something the collective we should be doing. And one of that is poor children. We did an audit of the state's child abuse hotline. Now, without being flip at all, how many people have heard about the Jerry Sandusky scandal? Okay? As a result of that, the legislature updated a lot of the child protection laws. After that happened, there's a program where if you suspect child abuse, you're supposed to call. It's called Childline, the Child Abuse Hotline. We did an audit of that in 2015 and 2016. and we found 58,000 unanswered phone calls at the child abuse hotline. Nearly 25%. Now again, regardless of whether you're liberal, moderate, or conservative, we all know if a kid's getting hurt, somebody has to do something. And we could debate about the best way to deal with it, whether it's county, state, feds, whatever. But 58,000 unanswered phone calls at the child abuse hotline. Any single one of them could have been a life or death situation for a child. That was after Sandusky that happened, when everyone knew the dangers. We also did an audit on untested rape kits. Now, I'll be the first to admit I had heard the term untested rape kit, or the term rape kit, but I didn't really know what the test involved. For those of you that don't know, it is the definition of invasiveness for the woman. A minimum of a 4-hour test. Minimum. If the woman is making the accusation to go through the kit, that means she cannot shower, she could not have bathed in any way, shape, or form, and she has to go right to the hospital or the police station to go through this kit. Our audit found that there were over 3,000 untested rape kits in Pennsylvania. 60% of the police departments didn't even know there was a state law requiring them to submit the data to the Department of Human Services. Each one of those kits should have been entered into the FBI database so we can crack down on these people. Now, the myth about the guy at the fraternity party and he does it once and he feels bad and never does it again, I'm not going to say that never happens. 90 to 95% of rapists are serial rapists. So those 3,000 untested kits could have led to potentially preventing thousands of rapes in the future getting cracked down on. As a result of our 2 audits there, the child abuse hotline error rate now is down to 2% from 25%. So we've made tremendous progress. And the untested rape kits, now 90% of the police departments are complying, and with a lot more tests now through the pipeline, we're down to an 1,800 backlog, with a lot more tests that have gone through. So we've made some important progress on those 2 issues. And that's some of the work that we can do. Calling things as we see it, as your Auditor General, as your fiscal watchdog. The reason why I talk about why it's important that we look at the wasteful spending that we find is because programs like that really matter. Again, we can have a debate about what's the appropriate corporate net income tax rate. Some may think it's too high, some think it's right, but there's too many loopholes. We can all have those opinions. But if a woman is violated and the police station does the test and they never submit the data, it doesn't matter your ideology. That is wrong. If a kid is harmed and somebody calls the state because the state said, here's the number to call, and nobody answers the phone, that is wrong. And the credibility we have in calling like we see it helps lead to the legislature, both Republican and Democrat, to work together to find the funding or the necessary forms to fix some of those problems. And I'm proud of the work we've done in those 2 areas and in so many others. One of the areas that is literally, to me, the definition of simple. Now, how many people here know, and by the way, this isn't as big of an issue in Lancaster, but know that school districts are not required to bid their school bus contracts? Not required. We have 500 school districts in Pennsylvania. My audits in my first term found $55 million in wasteful spending in school transportation contracts. 53 of that $55 million came from the 19 school districts that don't competitively bid their transportation contracts, which means 481 districts accounted for $2 million in overspending, 19 accounted for 53. Now, I may just be a guy that grew up in a blue-collar neighborhood in Pittsburgh, but the numbers are the numbers. So as a result of that, I think that we should be requiring every single school district to competitively bid their transportation contract, including one district alone in the northeastern part of the state, specifically the Scranton School District, did a previous audit found, and we're getting ready to wrap up our next one. That school district alone wasted $4 million on an unbid transportation contract. That's your money. Those are your tax dollars. Because 70% of the funding in that district comes from the state. 70%. That means we're all helping to pay for that misguided spending. Now again, let's just take for the argument's sake, because people say, if you get rid of that 53 million or 55 million, that's not going to eliminate our school taxes. Fair point. At least you can make the argument, which I do, that that 55 million can be better spent than what it's doing now. Here's another thing. You may be shocked to hear this. City of Philadelphia School District had 40,000 textbooks sitting in their basement during our audit that we found, unopened, completely wrapped, while kids in some of their schools didn't have books. Did an audit of the Pittsburgh School District. We go out there, we found they had a $129 million fund balance. Went out there to congratulate them. Say, great job being good fiscal stewards. School board members are in the back of the room. Asked me afterwards, can you come here a second? Yeah. You sure about those numbers? Yeah. Why? Well, we're scheduled to vote to raise taxes tonight. You're doing what? You have the largest fund balance in the state. Yeah, but we didn't know. Well, look, I may not be Bill Clinton or Ronald Reagan when it comes to politics, but if I were you, I wouldn't be voting to raise taxes with the largest fund balance in the state. And as a result of our audit, they didn't increase property taxes. So the audit does have impact, but it also shows there's things that we got to be doing a lot better in Pennsylvania. And one of those things that we have to be doing better is our state budget process. Now, we all can have our point of view as to who's more the blame. Republican House, Republican Senate, Democratic House. Well, it's tough to blame the Democrats in the House because they're kind of not that many of them, but Democrats in the Senate, I say that somewhat tongue-in-cheek, or the governor. If we're sitting there on arguing which one is more to blame, you can have some fun with that, but I'm here to tell you, if you're leaving somebody out of the blame game, you're making a mistake, because everybody has some responsibility in this. And I would put myself and the treasurer into that as well, meaning we all have some role in fixing this, because it is a mess. We have a budget now where there's $32 billion in agreement on spending, and there's only a $30 billion agreement on how to fund it. Gentleman here, MIT grad, University of Chicago, pretty good schools. Not bad, right? Not bad. But I'm not saying it's both fun, because they are awesome schools. But you don't have to be from the University of Chicago to know $32 billion in spending, $30 billion in revenue, you got a $2 billion gap. You can figure that one out in almost any elementary school. And yet we've been suffering through this now for the last several months. And I'm here to tell you, again, regardless of who you think is more to blame, there is a real cost to this inaction. Who here knows about credit downgrades from Standard & Poor's? We have to get it to where everyone's hand's going up. Because I know what they say behind closed doors. Oh, it's a one-day news story, nobody cares. Standard & Poor's sets the credit rating of state governments. That doesn't sound too sexy, does it? Nobody's really staying up at halftime to watch Monday Night Football over that, like the Star Wars trailer. But when they downgraded Pennsylvania because we didn't have a balanced budget, that made it more expensive to borrow. So let's just take, hypothetically speaking, there's a school district, hypothetically in Lancaster County, that's hypothetically thinking about building a new middle school. Whether you're for it or not, but I'm just giving you a hypothetical. Previous to the state budget debacle that led to the credit downgrade, we had a much higher credit rating, which means when that hypothetical school district went out to borrow for the building, they would get a very good interest rate. But because there's no state budget, and Standard & Poor's downgraded our creditworthiness as a state, that new middle school, hypothetically speaking, will now get much more expensive to build through no fault of anyone in this room, and through no fault of the school board or the administration. That is something they had nothing to do with. And that type of problem is happening all over Pennsylvania. Every time you see a bridge getting fixed, PennDOT doesn't pay for that in cash. You do a big loan and then you pay off the loan. That's how you get the biggest bang for your buck. The only problem is now with the credit downgrading, we're going to be able to fix less bridges because of that. So right now, we have a situation where the governor said he's going to fix it all by himself, and we have, we haven't even gotten the lease, the details yet. We're supposed to get them soon on the farm show and the LCB and all this other stuff. Look, we got to get out of this mess, and we got to get to a point where, and I want to end it on this. I've run for office 3 times to the legislature, have won each of those races, and 2 times for statewide office. And I am a Democrat, although I do believe I'm a middle-of-the-road Democrat, particularly on economic issues. But regardless of that, we have to get back to compromise is not a dirty word. Compromise is not a dirty word. We all compromise in every day of our lives. You have a spouse, what are you eating for dinner tonight? The kids, think about your daily life. You can have your firm principles, we all have them. But negotiating and compromising is not a dirty word. At the federal level, everybody knows there's problems with Obamacare. Everybody knows that. And you can fix those. And then some of that may be repealing some provisions and agreeing to others, etc. But they're not even talking to each other. They're negotiating through Twitter. The state budget, I don't know if the leadership and the governor have even met in the last week. I don't even know if they've met. And again, when you have a Republican legislature and a Democratic governor, hopefully I'm not piercing the corporate veil, they have some disagreements. And by the way, that's fine. That's fine. The people elected them both. And it's the job to figure it out. And regardless of what any of our own point of view about Bill Clinton or Newt Gingrich, in the 1990s, you couldn't have 2 different people. And Gingrich led the Republican Revolution. They took over the House, and you had Bill Clinton as president. And they cut some political deals that in the short term, both their bases were pretty upset about. In the second half of the 90s, we had the largest economic growth period in the history of the United States. The federal deficit shrank, and I think you could also look at some core government services that actually got better because they worked together to figure it out. And both of them will tell you in their books and when you read this stuff, it took them weeks and months to get to that point because they worked at it. And again, I can understand maybe some of you never voted for Bill Clinton or never would have voted for Newt Gingrich or vice versa. But that's what they did. We have to get back to that. It's hard sometimes. You start off with this core point of view, but you got to negotiate. When you have, and when it comes to the federal level now, I'm just going to tell you, and regardless of whether you like them or not, and there's some things I agree and some things I disagree. I'm just giving you my political instinct. If you got a 52 seat in the majority, one of the best ways to negotiate tax reform is not to attack one of those 52 members. Okay? Because now you're down to 51. And if people think that's not how politics works, I'm telling you, that's how it works. Bob Corker's now a no vote. Now, regardless of whether you think he was right or wrong to attack Senator Corker, I'm here to tell you, he might have had a point of view, but sometimes you just got to eat it. Because you're not just in this for you or me, we're in it for the collective we. And we've got to get back to where that starts to matter again. If Newt Gingrich and Bill Clinton can do it, we all can do it. And I thank you for coming here and having the opportunity to speak, and I look forward to answering any questions. Thank you very much.